Right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Going to go over some of our operations and norms. So if you'd like to seek the floor for any reason, please raise your hand using the reactions button in the Zoom window, and then pressing raise hand. Paul, our chair, will call on people in the order that they appear. Once you've spoken, please lower your hand. And if you're calling in, you can press *9 to raise your hand. If the chair needs to take a quick poll of the membership, they may ask you to choose a yes or no reaction. This is also found where you find the raise hand and the reactions in the participant panel. There may be times when the chat is disabled this evening, but you're still able to message the hosts. So please feel free to do so if you need to. If you need voting code help, please email tally@43rddemocrats.org. And we do live stream on YouTube and have comments enabled if you wish to take part in discussions there. So just to go over our meeting norms, please treat everyone with dignity and respect. If you don't know the answer to something, please ask. Know your presence and step up and step back and know when to do so. Remember that everyone here is a volunteer and we all share responsibility for staying on time. Next slide. Paul, next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. So we use Robert's Rules of Order. There are a set of parliamentary procedures that we run through in our meetings. You don't need to know all the details to participate, but if you'd like to contribute, please raise your hand and we'll help you form the request into a motion. Most motions are pretty simple. I move that we approve, amend, postpone the resolution. As a member, you have a full right to participate in the meetings. And if you need us to slow down and explain what's going on, please raise your hand and ask us to do so, and we're happy to. And if you are just the best at parliamentary procedure, please use your powers for good and consider the impact of making a complicated motion that will have on the whole group and meeting as a whole. And then we'll go into our land acknowledgement. Although we are joining virtually tonight, we'd like to start this meeting acknowledging that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. And if you'd like to learn more about whose land you occupy or have occupied, you can see the map native-land.ca. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Emily. And once again, Liam has posted the credential form. Please credential yourself so we have a count and know when we reach quorum. I'll put the agenda in the chat again. And here's the agenda here. I will call the meeting to order. Until we have quorum, we will not have an official meeting. Liam, if you can let me know when the credential form says that we have enough, and we will start a formal meeting. So we will postpone at this moment the approval of the minutes from September, and we will proceed with informational portions of the meeting. So first off, it is October 15th. Ballots are being mailed tomorrow. They should arrive in your mailbox end of the week. We strongly encourage you to vote right away, and to also encourage your friends, family, neighbors to vote as well. We will send out some emails that you can pass around that include our endorsement list for all the candidates that are and all the candidates and the initiatives and other matters that are on the November ballot. There's lots of opportunity over the next month for you to get involved in helping campaigns get out the vote and spread the word about their campaigns. From Sean and Alex's campaigns, which we'll hear about in just a few minutes, to the Kamala Harris campaign, to the Say No on all the right-wing initiatives campaigns. There's lots of opportunity there. Ryan has been sending out mails with information on how you can get involved. Sorry, thank you. And Melissa's campaign as well. Ryan's been sending out mails about how you can get involved and connected with all those campaigns so you can help out with door knocking and other things as well. So strongly encourage you to get involved in whatever way you can, and especially to leverage your social networks, not just on social networking apps, but also in person, friends, family, neighbors, etc., to get the word out, to get people to vote for our endorsed candidates in November. This is as you all know, this is a existentially important election at many levels of candidacy. Let's see, next thing to part of my report, PCO terms will be ending at the end of November. So if you were a PCO, whether appointed or elected for the 2023-2024 years, your term is ending at the end of November. If you were elected in August of 2024, August of this year, your term starts on December 1st. This is important because our reorg is coming, and our elected PCOs have the privilege and responsibility to vote for the new 43rd board at our reorg in January. If you were an appointed PCO and you did not run for your elected position, or if you've moved into a new precinct since the election, we will have an opportunity to appoint new PCOs January, February, after the new board is elected. We'll be sending out more information about reorg in the coming weeks, probably after the election, just to not distract anybody from the important work that needs to be done for the election. And let's see, we're still short quorum, it looks like. Ryan, is there anything else to say about get out the vote at this point?
I'd say I sent another email out today. You'll get one once a week. And yeah, just find the events that you can engage in, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can engage with your social networks after Sean talks about it.
And one thing, sorry, I'll just jump in. We got updates from the Representative Schreier campaign and Emily Randall's campaigns for Congress on opportunities to phone bank door knock for the rest of the month. Ryan, could we, after this, follow up with that list for folks if they want to get engaged there? They're super excited that folks from the 43rd might be interested, and so we can follow up with those opportunities as well.
All right. Thank you both. All right, first up, then, moving on from chair report, while we still wait to see if we meet quorum, we'll invite Sean Scott, who, of course, is running for the 43rd LD and was endorsed by the 43rd for that position to speak to us again about his campaign. And he'll also speak about Alex Mercedes Rink's campaign as she is sick and unable to meet with us tonight. Sean. If someone can assist in.
There we go. Looks like
There we go.
was
Awesome. Thank you.
able to come off mute there. Thank you very much for that introduction, Paul. As Paul mentioned, I'm going to be speaking on behalf of my own campaign and also on behalf of Alexis Mercedes Rinks. Alexis is a little bit under the weather, as many candidates who have been, pushing very hard into the selection cycle tend to get when the weather turns in the general election. But for our part of it on the 43rd LD campaign and my campaign to represent the 43rd LD in the State House, we're feeling great about our chances of prevailing in November. We were able to win 59.11% of the vote in the primary. Since then have had strong showings at neighborhood canvases in Montlake, Eastlake, Portage Bay. We've been hitting doors, Wallingford, doing our best to consolidate our support and actually grow it with the message of economic justice in the state of Washington. So if anybody would like to come out and hit doors with us as we're getting down to the last stretch of the election here, you can feel free to register at betterwashington.org, which is our campaign website. There you can see more about the policies that we've been talking to voters about as well. And that's a great place to get dialed into the campaign and the movement that we're trying to build in the 43rd Legislative District with the help of the 43rd LD Democrats as well. This Saturday, or Sunday, I should say, we're going to be doing a group canvass in the 43rd LD with the state coordinated campaign, meeting up at Wallingford Playfield at 1 p.m., 10 a.m., and then again at 1 p.m. I'll probably come through both days. So it would be great to see everybody. There are as many people as can make it. So, in the state legislature, I've tried to talk a lot about what we can get done. The fact that fully funding our schools, implementing housing protections for renters, advancing labor rights are all policy priorities of mine. But there's a lot that we're going to depend on other levels of government for, be it the federal situation and making sure that we're stewarding the funds that we're receiving federally correctly, and at the city level, knowing that we have a really exciting candidate in Alexis Mercedes Rink, who is running for Seattle City Council and had some pretty good results in the primary as well, makes me really, really excited about what we're going to be able to get done for working people and for everyday people. This is going to be a very important election as far as bringing balance back to the city council and understanding that some of the budget cutbacks that we're seeing, some of the austerity measures that we have seen in recent years from the city of Seattle, we need to have a counterbalance against that. And Alexis is somebody who understands that the conversation about budgeting at the city level is a conversation about values. It's a conversation about why it's not right that we have some of the richest individuals in human history in the city of Seattle and the state of Washington, at the same time that we're talking about shutting down the Seattle Channel and closing down libraries and reducing hours for swimming pools. And that's a framing that I think most people, certainly in the 43rd Legislative District, and I believe definitely in the state of Washington, agree with. The issue is that we often don't get to hear from as robust a cohort of voters, if you will, in our city elections as we do in our state representative elections. And of course, this year is different because Alexis is going to be, or is running in this presidential election year cycle, the first time in 20 years, I believe that that's happened for a city council seat. So we stand a great chance of getting somebody that I think is going to be a great champion of progressive causes, somebody who understands the conversation around social inclusivity and economic justice, somebody who I can't wait to work with in Olympia if we're both able to finish our respective jobs, which more and more start to feel like more and more the same campaign the closer we get to November, both with myself and the 43rd LD State House rep race and Alexis over in City Council. So with your help, with your support, I think the both of us are going to do great things by the people of the 43rd LD and the city of Seattle in our respective offices. So it's an honor to be able to speak here tonight on behalf of Alexis's campaign. And if you want to throw in a little bit of support for my campaign as well, that would be cool too. It looks like we've got a question, which I'm happy to take. I think I see a hand up from Rich.
Yeah, I just want to remind people that Alexis can be funded with your democracy voucher. If you haven't already used every Seattle registered voter in Seattle gets democracy vouchers. If you haven't used them yet, please go to Alexis for Seattle and donate your democracy vouchers. This year, you only get 2, so it's a total of $50. And her opponent, who will remain unnamed, got $60,000 from Downtown Realtor Association, which means to balance that out, she needs 1,200 democracy vouchers. So please check and see. If you haven't used it yet, please give it to her. She's your endorsed candidate. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich, for that reminder. Does anyone have questions for Sean?
Okay, you can turn it.
Emily.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. This isn't really a question, but it's more a note of appreciation. This is my first 43rd meeting. I've never been before. And I joined because I'm a new Seattle Public Schools parent, and I have a kindergartner who's in one of the schools that it might be on the chopping block, which is Stevens Elementary in our district here. So I just wanted to say thank you, Sean. I've been reading up on what you've been writing about schools and the need for solidarity and a stronger statewide approach. I really liked that. Been donating to your campaign, and just want to appreciate you. And like all the other schools, the PTA at Stevens is putting together a letter and figuring out what we can do, and really appreciate the support from you and others as well. Thank you. So less a question, more thank you.
That makes me feel great to hear, Emily. Thank you so much. I think it's, I'm product of public education all the way from kindergarten up through the University of Washington, where I studied history. And you could look at sort of the excuses that I think we've had of late to not take action on funding education to the most robust levels that we possibly can. They tend to look really the same throughout generations. They tend to be similarly, caught up on short-term concerns that in the end tend to not matter a lot. And this is, I think the most important investment that we can be making. There's a reason why the GOP spends as much energy as they do attacking books and libraries, and why the idea of funding public schools robustly is distasteful to so many, folks that are on the other side of the issue as us, is because they understand the value that fully funding public education will have to our society, what a relief it will be for working parents to have that be one less stressor that we're dealing with. So it's something that I'm doing my best to stand up for in the course of the campaign trail, and I know that we'll be able to do a lot by revising our funding model and preventing school closures in Olympia as well. Two major priorities of mine. And hopefully we're able to win this election and make sure that that doesn't happen and that we can, you know, take real progress on over or revamping our state's school funding, public school funding model. Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. Elaine?
Hi, Sean. I did a little canvassing for you in the Madison Park area, and it went well. I want to know if you are, have you met any of the people in the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability? It's acronym WCPA. It's a group of members of families of victims of police violence, of police killing, who have been advocating for the last 4 years for legislation on limitations on things like traffic stops, prosecutor, independent investigator. Can't think of the other one, but I've been supporting them for a long time. I just wonder if they're definitely counting on your race to be one of the, an ally to the legislation they're going to reintroduce. And I just wonder if you've made any introductions there.
You know, I've had Elaine, it's so good to see you and so appreciative of your support. It's a great question. I've had the opportunity to interface with folks from WCPA in previous years, not yet on this particular in this particular election cycle. But I support what WCPA represents, what they stand for, the policy measures that they've put forward, I think are on the correct side of all the serious analysis that's been done around what it would look like to have a Washington state that's committed to police accountability. And so I support I support what they do, and I look forward to working with them and deepening our relationship. But we have not had the chance to speak with one another in the course of this campaign, but I'm definitely going to make it a note to reach out to them this week.
Have you been in touch with Dr. Gary? He is the interim executive, I guess.
Yeah, not just yet, not in this particular campaign cycle, but I look forward to reaching out, and we'll do so this week so we can figure out what they're thinking for the 2025 legislative session.
Yeah, they've already done a lot of work on it. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
I think I saw a hand from Linda, if I'm not mistaken. Thanks, Elaine.
Linda, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any
other questions for Sean? All right. Well, thank you very much, Sean. Both for running and for the dialogues that you have started throughout this campaign, and the history, context, depth of thought that you have brought to the issues and the policy that are needed by Washington. So greatly appreciate it. You have our full support, and we'll make sure to get out to the membership ways that they can get connected with you and help support your campaign.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So speaking of ways to get connected to all the different campaigns, so in the chat, you'll see a couple of different events. Sunday with Sean, Saturday, Alexis is going to be out with Councilmember Morales starting at noon down in, why I'm spacing on it now. South Seattle, somewhere in South Seattle. I forget the specific area, but you can check click the link and you can sign up to join us for that one. Of course, Melissa's got events on multiple days in multiple locations. You can check those out. And of course, you've got the emails that I'm sending out weekly that have lots of different ways to get connected. But one other way, other than canvassing, that we can all get involved is to do some connection with our community and the people that we're already connected with. I'm really trying to make Hot to Vote a thing this year. So, if people can spread it around, Hot to Vote 2024. But I want to talk a little bit about the most effective and powerful tool that all of us have, which is relational organizing. And put simply, it's just the proven concept that people talking to their friends and their family is way more effective than when we go in and talk to strangers. And a conversation between people who trust each other has found to be twice as effective as a conversation between people who don't know each other. And those conversations last a lot longer. Now, I'm guessing most of you are probably, if you're showing up to this meeting, you're probably pretty politically involved. You're probably already talking to a couple of people you know about politics and making sure that they have plans to vote. But this is like the most effective strategy that all of us can be using because we have higher trust in the relationships that we have. And we know that we live in a media sphere right now where people are getting blasted with ads all the time. They're getting lots of misinformation and disinformation, especially if they're looking on social media or just going to various different news sources. And the one thing that we have, the one tool that we have that can break through all of that and help people to really understand what's going on, understand the stakes of these elections, understand why we get involved, is to use our relationships with them. And part of the effectiveness of relational organizing is just due to the fact that we have these relationships with people, and it doesn't even really matter often what we're asking them to do. Just the fact that we have a relationship with them is enough to get them to check that they're registered to vote, remember to make a plan for voting. So a couple of tips and tricks as we encourage you to do this. How do we most effectively reach out to people? One of the most useful tools that you can do is to share, why does an issue or a candidate matter to you? So if you're reaching out and saying, hey, everyone, there's these 4 terrible initiatives that are going to be on the ballot. We want to vote no on all 4 of them. Adding in a line of why it matters to you. Why are you out there and connecting with them? Is it because it would repeal some of our state's largest climate laws and make the catastrophe, the impacts of climate change more prevalent for you or your kids or your grandchildren? Is it because it makes absolutely no sense for us to give a tax break to the 4,000 richest Washingtonians to take hundreds of millions of dollars away from childcare and early education? Is it because a particular candidate has a really strong stance on something that you really agree with them on? So finding that personal connection. And then making the talking points your own, right? Figuring out why you're connected. And it's the same, if any of you have gone out canvassing, it's the same that we do when we knock on doors, right? We say, hi, I'm a volunteer, and I'm spending my time right now to go out and advocate for this person because I believe in this thing they stand for, or, adding those reasons in. So as you're thinking about people to reach out to, think about people and networks that you have influence with. Ideally, we want to start by aiming for a receptive audience. So don't aim for, that one relative who is super MAGA and is just going to get in a giant argument with you. Aim for people that are ideally kind of tuned out to politics. They might be apathetic. They might not follow it very often. Maybe they only check in like a couple of days before ballots are due, and that's the only time that they're really aware of what's going on. Those are amazing people for us to connect with because unlike those of us who are attending this meeting, the vast majority of people do not follow the intricate ins and outs of what's going on, especially on state races, on local races, on these ballot initiatives. Yeah, people are probably aware of what's going on the presidential level, but on all of the other things on their ballot, the vast majority of voters are just now starting to tune in. They're just now starting to figure out what all of these things are. And connecting with those people who aren't following it day in and day out, those are great people to send out messages to and connect with. So what we'd ask you to do, most effective thing, is to just think about who are the people you can connect with. Are there contacts in your phone? Do you have, can you scroll through your social media and see someone you haven't checked in with on a while? Go through the messages or your texting and see if there's anyone there. Make a list of friends, coworkers, family, people in your faith groups, people you play pickleball with, online friends, book clubs, music groups, anything that you have a connection with. And now is the ideal time. ballots are getting sent out on Wednesday. They're going to be dropping in people's mailboxes by the end of this week. Now is the ideal time to reach out to people and say, hey, your ballot's coming in at the end of this week. Can we like grab a coffee and I talk about some of the important issues that are on here? Or, hey, ballots are coming in the end of this week. Just want to let you know there's 4 terrible initiatives on the top of it. You should vote no on all 4 of them. And while you're at it, vote for Sean Scott and Alexis Mercedes Rink and Melissa. So how you do this is going to depend on the person you're connecting with. You have the best sense of what's going to be the best way to connect with different people. For some people, it might be grabbing a coffee. For some people, it might be bringing it up at the next meeting of your group. For some people, it might be an actual phone call. And for some people, it might be a text. It's going to be different for every person. But as you're thinking through the people that you think would most benefit from you reaching out, think about for each one of them, what's my best way to connect with them? And then remind them about when their ballots are coming and when their ballots are due, right? Ballots are coming the end of this week. Ballots are due November 5th. And encouraging people, as Paul said at the very beginning, to vote as early as they can remember to do so. We want to get people's ballots in early so that they can track them and they can check that they don't have any issues and they don't need to resolve a signature that doesn't match or anything like that. So my ask for all of you is to think of 5 people in the next week that you can reach out to. You can send them a text, you can give them a call, you can shoot them an email, you can grab coffee with them, whatever is going to make the most sense. But think of 5 people that you can connect with and remind them ballots are coming, and share some of the important issues for you on that ballot and encourage them to vote. Okay. That's my spiel. Oh, wait, no, I had some extra. Other ways you can get involved. I was like, I got through the heavy part of the spiel. Why don't I do the some other ways that you can get involved? As we've talked about, there's lots of canvassing opportunities. You can, there's tabling events at farmers markets. There's lots of door knocking that's happening right now. You can do it with a specific campaign. As we talked about earlier, Melissa, Sean, Alexis, all of them are doing specific events. You can also connect with the coordinated campaign, which is our state coordinated campaign. They are adopting orphan precincts, which are low propensity voters, people who often don't vote consistently. And those are the people that we really want to be connecting with right now. They're also sharing all of the Defend WALIT, so sharing literature against all 4 of the state initiatives. So if you want to be really helping to get the word out about those, the coordinated campaign is a great place to go for that. And then, of course, if you're a PCO, you can reach out to me and I will get you your canvassing list. You can just fill out that little link that I send you at the bottom of each of those emails, and I will get you a list within a couple of days. Also, there's a lot of opportunities for phone banking. Jeremy mentioned a few more that will get sent out to you soon. I know Alexis is doing some phone banking. Phone banking is happening on the No on 2117 campaign. And there's these opportunities to help out our sister districts as well. So if you don't want to go out and like hit the beat with your feet, you can do it on the phone, and we can help you get set up with those opportunities as well. Also, postcard writing. There are a couple of different groups that are doing this. There's some postcards being done on the No on 2117 campaign, and there's some other campaigns that are doing postcards as well. A great way to get in to reach out to renters or other voters that are often more challenging to hit while we're door knocking. So lots and lots of awesome opportunities to get involved. Okay, I think now I'm actually done. So I will stop screen sharing. And if you have any questions, you're looking for stuff and you don't know, you're not finding something, anything like that, please reach out to me. You all are getting emails from me once a week. So you've got my email address in your inbox. Shoot me an email. I will help you connect with the campaign. I'll help you find a way to get involved. But we're hitting go time. The next couple of weeks are the sprint to the end. And I know none of us wants to wake up the morning after the election and feel remorse that we didn't do what we could to get our strong progressive candidates across the finish line, and to get all 4 of these state initiatives defeated, and to get the transportation levy passed, and all the great things that are going to be on this ballot. Awesome. So with that, I will sit back.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Does anyone have questions for Ryan? Ryan has been doing a smashing job organizing all our PCOs, collecting information from campaigns to funnel it out to you all. been incredible to have you on board and providing that for us, Ryan. Thank you very much. Any additional questions? Okay. Well, thank you. Next up on the agenda is a resolution on affordable housing at Fort Lawton. We are not able to hold a vote on this as we don't have quorum. So I will simply post that resolution in the chat here. Give me a second and I'll bring it up and we can just have a very brief conversation about it. Again, we're not going to have a vote because we don't have quorum, but I do want to raise this issue with you all. Let's see, share my screen. All right. Is it here? Yeah. So just briefly here, as you are probably all aware, Fort Lawton, which is in part of Discovery Park, was given to the city of Seattle for the purposes of becoming affordable housing. A portion of it also became the Daybreak Cultural Center. There's a long history of the site. The portion, a subset of Fort Lawton, which has been designated for affordable housing, has been in limbo for a long number of years, pending various lawsuits and project planning and other things. And the city is looking to start moving forward perhaps a little more expeditiously than it has over the last, I think it's about 10 some years that it's been in limbo at this point. And so this resolution is to encourage the city of Seattle to increase the density on the site so that it's been so long trying to get housing built here that in order to make it cost effective, there needs to be a bit more housing built on the site. So encouraging the city to increase the density and improve the infrastructure for accessing the site, getting to the site, so that more of the trees in the area can be maintained and other things like that. So link is in the chat. The link was also in the meeting agenda. And at a future meeting, when we have quorum, we will take up this initiative. I'll also note that this same initiative was passed by the 36 LD earlier this year, and they have reached out to us and other Seattle LDs asking other LDs to consider this resolution. And so again, at a future meeting when we have quorum, we will take up this resolution for a vote. All right. So continuing on with our informational meeting here, we have a presentation on the Seattle Solidarity Budget. The Seattle City Budget has been proposed by Mayor Harrell. In the agenda, there is many links to information on the budget, and we have got Kate, Clara, and Amy here from the Seattle Solidarity Budget to talk to us about the proposed budget, how you can get involved, what's at stake, what's in the budget, and other things like that. And so with that, I will turn it over to Kate, Clara, and Amy. If you all can raise your hand so we can find you, spotlight you, and unmute you, that would be great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And let us know if you're not able to share.
Give me just a moment to pull this up. Or Kate, are you able to share your screen? Kate, can you
No,
hear me?
I'm not.
Oh,
Sorry.
give me just a second then. My apologies.
Oh, sorry. We need to let you share. There you go. Now you should be able to share.
Here we go. Got it pulled open. All right. Can you all see that?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having us all here. Is Amy here as well, or is she running a little bit behind? I just saw Kate there. I don't see Amy. Maybe we just get started and she can join in when she's able. So my name is Clara Cantor. I'm an organizer with Seattle Solidarity Budget, and we are happy to be here to speak to you all tonight about the Seattle City budget process. We're going to do a little bit of an intro to who Seattle Solidarity Budget is, and then we're going to do kind of a what is the size and scope of the Seattle city budget, and then how we advocate for change and what's happening this year. Oh, I see Amy. Why don't you and Kate introduce yourselves?
Oh, yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Amy Sundberg. My pronouns are she, her. And I volunteer with Solidarity Budget. I also am a reporter at The Urbanist.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the organizing director at Be Seattle, and I am also a member of the Solidarity Budget Coalition.
Right. And I guess I didn't really introduce myself either. I'm an organizer with Seattle Neighborhood Greenways and with Whose Streets Are Streets. All right. So let's jump in. So Seattle Solidarity Budget, we are a cross-movement coalition that's fighting for a city budget that centers the needs of the most marginalized and vulnerable Seattleites, funds those needs, and prioritizes collective care and liberation. We formed back in 2020 during the George Floyd uprising and the defund the police movement. And Seattle Solidarity Budget began kind of as the reinvest arm of the divest invest movement here in Seattle. And we've continued each year to fight for community needs on an annual basis through the Seattle city budget process. And each year we've expanded a little bit as well. And now we do organize year round, including public education on different issues that we're talking about, and trainings and development of our volunteers and things like that. At the core of the Solidarity Budget is that word solidarity. Basically, we kind of came together because of our refusal to allow our movements to be pitted against each other for funding, because divesting from cops and from cages goes hand in hand with climate justice work and housing and transportation and childcare and living wages. And we need all of those things in order to be able to thrive as a city. Our wins over time, the first 2 years that we were in existence, we won historic cuts to SPD's budget. We were the only major city in the country that was able to successfully cut our police budget 2 years in a row after 2020, and also some initial investments in community-based solutions to solutions to harm and participatory budgeting and things like that. it wasn't enough, but we were making some gains. Even this year, with a more conservative backswing from our elected leaders, we have been a part of a lot of organizing, basically stopping bad things from happening. Things like defending minimum wage for gig workers and tipped workers, stopping attempts to defund the Equitable Development Initiative, or EDI, improving the proposed transportation levy by about $150 million towards improvements for people walking, biking, and taking transit. And that approved package is now going to voters in November, and I believe you all have endorsed it. So good job on that. Vote yes on Prop 1, as an aside. Yeah, let me move away from this wall of text on the slide. There we go. So we at Solidarity Budget came up with 9 guarantees. These are basically the things that we're demanding the city of Seattle provide to residents of our city. Basic guarantees that provide kind of a base standard of living and quality of life for people in Seattle. The city, especially lately, but kind of in general, has prioritized enforcement and punishment as a means to kind of attempt to mitigate social issues when the services and the access to resources that we know actually reduce the circumstances that, you know, lead to contact with police and the punishment system are what people need. So this is the list of 9 guarantees. We have basic income, living wage, health, care, which is encompassing both youth and elder care, food, transportation, climate action and resiliency, housing, and communication. And I'm not going to dive into all of those. There's a lot of information that we could share, but if you're interested, you can visit our website, which is seattlesolidarityBudget.com. So we center our advocacy around the Seattle city budget. There are a lot of other budgets that also impact us as a city. The King County budget, the state budget, Seattle Public Schools also has their own separate budget. There's a lot of different kind of revenue sources running around, but the Seattle city budget is what we're here to talk to you about tonight. So we'll stick to that one. Seattle has an unusually strong mayor's office in our budget process here, where the mayor's office starts by drafting their proposed budget over the spring and summer with input from all the city departments about what they need. And then they'll release their proposed budget in the last week of September. So that's come out and we have that publicly available now. And now we're into October, which is when the city council budget committee meetings begin. And there's kind of about a month and a half in there where the city council will fiddle around the edges of the mayor's proposal. And that's a cycle where the council members will propose amendments. The council budget chair, which is Dan Strauss this year, will release or will package up all those amendments together that the council is agreeing upon, and then release what's called the chair's package, the chair's balancing package, I think is what it's called. And then there's a second round where council members will propose amendments to that. And then at the end of November, council will pass the final approved budget, which is a biennium 2025 to 2026 budget. So that gives us, as the general public, about a month and a half to organize and advocate for the things that we want to see that budget in that budget, and to make that budget better aligned with our values. So I'm going to pause there and pass it to Amy.
All right. So I'm going to set the scene a little bit just so that you have kind of a basic perspective of the budget. But I know probably what you all are most interested in is this year's proposal. So we'll try to get to that quickly. So this is just a pie chart of what a budget looks like in Seattle. This is 2024's adopted budget. You can see the pie chart on the left. That's the total budget, which is $7.8 billion. But a lot of that money is restricted. So what that means is that it has to be spent for certain things. So for example, a lot of the money, as you can see, comes from utilities. But if Seattle City Light brings in money, that money has to be spent within Seattle City Light. It cannot be spent for any other purpose. Levies are another example. Usually those dollars are meant to be for very specific purposes and cannot just be spent on whatever. If you look at the pie chart on the right, that is the general fund. That is the part that is unrestricted. And that is mostly what the council is discussing during these budget talks in October and November. It's the part that both the mayor and the council can move around and adjust and do most of the kind of decision making about. So next slide. So again, this is the 2024 adopted budget. So that was for this year. And you can see kind of the breakdown of what we spent money on for this year's budget. And you can see how much SPD in particular takes up of our budget. It was 23% in 2024. For the 2025 proposed budget, that number is up slightly to 24.5%. So basically a quarter of all of the unallocated, unrestricted general fund money goes directly to SPD. And, you know, as it says on the left, that doesn't include a lot of other carceral kind of expenses like jails, like the city attorney, like the courts, et cetera, et cetera. You can see that fire also takes up a decent chunk, as does human services. So it just kind of gives you an idea of what we've been spending our money on as a city. And we can go to the next slide, which I think shows us some more of those carceral expenses. So again, this is from this year, 2024, not the proposal. But it shows kind of the breakdown of, again, how the money is spent in a slightly different context, right? So we broke down how much SPD cost with the courts, with the jails, and there's a whole list there of what was included in that percentage, and we got up to 36.4% of Seattle's, again, general fund unrestricted budget is going to kind of carceral concerns. I think most noteworthy, that does not include sweeps, which is actually, at this point, we're investing a significant amount in that. And then, you know, you can see everything else is about the same amount as the carceral stuff. So just another way to look at it. All right, and we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so now we're getting to this budget proposal that we are talking about right now, and hearing presentations about at council right now. So I think before I talk about what's on this slide, I just kind of want to give you the overall picture of what's happening with this budget. And basically what's happening is that things like SPD, jails, sweeps are getting more money than they had last year, and things like human services and you know, diversion services and stuff like that, is tending to get less. So what the mayor has basically said with this budget is he's going to kind of double down on the approach that we've already seen from him in the past, which is what could be considered a more carceral or law and order type of approach. So here you can see some of the expenses in this proposed budget for the next 2 years, which includes a significant amount of money for the new surveillance technology pilot. It includes the new SPOG contract raises for police officers, the new hiring bonuses, raises for the mayor's office staff, the ghost cops, more for sweeps, because now they want to be able to do homeless sweeps, not just Monday through Friday, but also on the weekend. which will cost $2.3 million to achieve that. The jail contract is getting more expensive with the King County Jail, and then also they have the new contract with the SCORE Jail down in Des Moines. The lawsuit money has gone up. Advertising for SPD and World Cup watch parties. So there you have it. A bunch of expenses that are proposed to be funded. So in the next slide, we're going to start talking about Jumpstart. And I apologize in advance if this gets a little wonky, but I do really feel like this is one of the most important issues that we're going to be talking about during budget season this year. And so I just want to make sure we all understand the basics of what it is that we're talking about. So the Jumpstart payroll tax, it's also called the pet payroll expense tax. It's also been called the Amazon tax, which is not completely accurate. But in any case, it was passed in the summer of 2020. It was a big progressive win, a new progressive revenue source for the city of Seattle. And frankly, it really, really saved us during the pandemic. I do not know what the city would have done without the Jumpstart tax, but I think it wouldn't have been pretty. It's a tax on big, rich companies. It's a volatile funding source. What that means is that it's a little bit hard to predict exactly how much money that tax will bring in from year to year. And part of the reason that it's volatile is that because a lot of it is paid by a very small number of companies. So if something happens to change the fortune of one of those 10 companies, that could really influence how much money we bring in. So far, that has influenced how much we've brought in a really great positive way for the city. We've brought in way more than we thought we would with the Jumpstart tax. And it has consistently, since it was passed, exceeded expectations of how much money it will bring in. In 2021, the city council passed a spending plan that was to basically put the money into buckets to put into law basically how this new funding source was going to be spent. That being said, in general, since 2020, there has been a history of transferring a little bit of the Jumpstart money to general fund. At first, that was actually kind of codified in that spending plan to help us be more nimble about responding to the pandemic. And since then, though, we still have been transferring a certain amount every year. And for this year, 2024, we transferred about $85 million to kind of plug in the general fund. But we'll go to the next slide now just to talk super briefly about what those buckets are that Jumpstart is by law meant to be spent on. And it's 62% housing, affordable housing, 15% small business supports and investments, 9% Green New Deal, and 9% the Equitable Development Initiative. So that is where the money is supposed to go. This slide is, I think, from like 2020 or 2021 one. So you can see when they originally thought that it would bring in $214 million, which it has consistently brought in more. So this was the plan as was passed by City Council in 2021. So the next slide. So that being said, this year, that is all kind of up for grabs. Basically, what the mayor did, we had a budget deficit. It was very large. It was $250 to $260 million, which for a budget deficit is quite it's quite big, to put it mildly. And the mayor moved over $287 million from that Jumpstart tax that is supposed to be spent on affordable housing and Green New Deal and equitable development to cover that deficit. And I really want to point out that he moved over more money than the deficit actually was. I think that's really significant because he added a whole bunch of his own priorities, $100 million. In fact, in a year in which we had a deficit of $250 million, he added $100 million more of funding for his pet projects, which is why he had to move so much of the Jumpstart money over, and also why we are going to be seeing some layoffs in 2026 and some programmatic cuts. Otherwise, the 287 million should have been more than enough to plug that deficit, but it was not. But what that means, because that 287 million was taken away from Jumpstart, that means we end up with a lot less money for affordable housing, which I'm particularly leaning on because we are in a housing crisis and we do need to build a certain number of units of affordable housing every year to kind of try to catch up. And we will not be doing that based on the current plan for 2026. And also, it's getting more expensive to build affordable housing, especially as inflation goes up. So there was actually a great Stranger article today all about affordable housing and how much money we need to be investing. So if you're interested, I suggest taking a look. It also means it's taking away from environmental justice initiatives, and that includes labor equity program that was eliminated, Indigenous-led sustainability projects were eliminated, equitable development, take some money from that. There is still money going to each of these things, but much less than if all of the Jumpstart money was being spent on it. The mayor chose to use the original kind of size of the investments, which weren't really adjusted properly for inflation even. So much less than they could have been. It's also funding a consultant to look at getting rid of Jumpstart potentially, which I found fascinating. And it depletes the Jumpstart fund balance, which I think is really interesting. There's an article about this last week in Publicola. You can check out if you're interested. And basically the fund balance, that's like the reserve of unspent money. And he's taking pretty much all of the reserve fund balance out between 2025 and 2026. There'll be less than $1 million left at the end of 2026 in that fund balance. And originally, again, that fund balance is supposed to be spent on Jumpstart priorities like affordable housing, and it's money that maybe didn't get spent in 2024 for various reasons, and now it's getting rolled in to pay for other things instead that have nothing to do with the Jumpstart priorities. So that is the Jumpstart kind of what's going on with it in a nutshell. The mayor is also going to try to pass legislation during this budget season that will make this change permanent. And I personally find that to be very concerning because it means that at that point, Jumpstart will kind of just be folded into general fund for the most part. We haven't gotten to see the actual legislation, but it definitely is something that will kind of erode some of the protections that we currently have around that Jumpstart fund. So next slide. So this is mostly what I was just talking about. One last thing that I do want to mention, though, is that, not only would the new legislation kind of potentially either make much smaller the Jumpstart original investments in affordable housing, Green New Deal, et cetera, or erase them altogether. As I said, we haven't seen it yet, so it's a little hard to know. But also, it's not a permanent fix in the structural problems that we're having with Seattle's budget. There's an estimated deficit of 78.6 million in 2027. And then it compounds, right? So in 2028, by then it would be $151 million deficit, even if we were to spend all this Jumpstart money for whatever we wanted. So it is not a permanent fix on our problems, which is why it is so important for us to pass new progressive revenue. So next slide.
Can I just add something to that, Amy, as well?
Yes, of course.
I feel like it's also important to note that Jumpstart is a payroll expense tax for high wages, which means that, you know, part of what advocates were fighting for when we originally kind of created that division of spending is that the more high wage earners we have in Seattle, the more wealth we have and economic growth we have as a city, the more the need grows for our investments in affordable housing and in environmental justice and in these vital things that are going to help us to kind of keep a balance of our city being affordable. Right now, you know, that's very much not happening. And this is sort of like a tiny little band-aid on a much larger problem. But as we pull funds away from those investments, we're exacerbating that problem.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's more short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. And it's also more kind of carceral thinking. I mean, Sue Rahr, the interim chief of police, just said SPD is a backstop. So what are we funding? We're funding the backstop, and we keep funding more and more the backstop. But what we're not doing is funding the root cause, you know, addressing the root causes or funding the programs that would help before that backstop, which is
just a really nice segue into this slide.
Yeah, deeply unfortunate. And I'll just finally say this is not technically illegal because they will be passing legislation that will basically change the law to make it legal.
So it's not technically illegal after they do that.
Exactly.
So this is more of what gets defunded in this year's budget. As Amy was saying, we're basically seeing an overwhelming shift away from the more upstream kind of proactive solutions that we know help people stay out of homelessness and stay away from needing to be evicted from their homes or other kind of dire circumstances, and towards enforcement, which again, as per SPD is meant to be the backstop, not kind of the first thing that we're doing. It cuts things like food access programs, senior assistance. There's layoffs in the Office of Labor Standards and the Office of Civil Rights, small business supports. Even in transportation, we're seeing cuts to safe streets infrastructure like new sidewalks and ADA programs, and instead leaning into automated enforcement and ticketing, cuts to childcare programs, legal assistance for public benefits and tax filing. All of these things that are in place to support people, proactive solutions are being cut, and instead we're seeing those dollars being put towards SPD and sweeps and things like that. I'm going to pass it over to Kate to talk a little bit more about housing.
Thank you. So there are some major cuts. I'm going to focus specifically, I think, on the tenant services and eviction defense and the rental services. These are beforehand a tiny drop in the bucket of our massive budget, but the mayor's proposed budget defunds the Department of Construction and Inspections, their rental assistance funds by about $1 million. So it goes down to $527,000. And it cuts the funds for tenant counseling, education, casework, and legal services about in half, from approximately 2.5 million to only 1.2 million. These are proposed to be cut when evictions are on the rise and homelessness is increasing everywhere. It also gives the opportunity potentially to roll back renter protections. Edmund Witter of the Housing Justice Project said that the proposed budget looks poised to cut right to counsel funding by roughly in half by when evictions are hitting record levels. And for small organizations like Be Seattle, we're primarily funded by the city to provide renter education and organizing training. That could mean sunsetting. And so there won't be a lot of organizations around to defend the renter protections and to stand up for renters. The legal counsel for homeless children and youth is also being cut. I don't have the exact amount here, and that is outside of my area of expertise. But like these are major impacts, and they're tiny amounts of funding that they're cutting when you look at this like broader spectrum. And as Amy noted, the mayor is investing $100 million into his own budget priorities. That's actually all I had to say about that.
So that's a lot of bad stuff we're trying to stop. How to get involved. First off, it's really important that council members hear from the public, especially from constituents. So if you are able to call your council member and the 2 at-large council members who are Tanya Wu and Sarah Nelson, that outreach does make a difference. You can also send an email to council@seattle.gov. You can oppose something very specific. You can oppose the whole thing writ large. You can say, I support Seattle Solidarity Budget asks. You can do any combination of the above. We actually have an enormous doc full of talking points about each of these specific issues, kind of organized around our 9 guarantees. But if you want to pick and choose, that can be a really great resource for folks who are trying to kind of wade through the massive amounts of information and trying to figure out what's actually important to you and your values. We really encourage people to just pick something that matters to you. Like tell a story about why this matters to you in your life and for you as a person. And that's always going to be a much more powerful, much more impactful comment than any amount of like trying to wade through the exact dollar figures of something and figure out data and statistical talking points. There are 2 public budget hearings coming up. One is tomorrow afternoon at 5:00 p.m. And the second one is Tuesday, November 12th at 5:00 p.m. Those are both at City Hall on the 2nd floor in City Council chambers, or you can also call in virtually, which is really nice. And then also just talking to people in Seattle about the budget makes a difference. All of this happens very quickly and kind of behind a lot of closed doors, and City Council has been really narrowing the opportunities for public comment kind of over the last couple of years, slowly and steadily, and then this year very rapidly, as they kind of limit the amount of community engagement and comment opportunities for people to engage with this. Also, if you're interested in joining us, Seattle Solidarity Budget is a group of volunteers. We're kind of made up of the people who show up and share their expertise and their passions and the things that they want to highlight and care about. And so we can always use more volunteers who are engaged in this issue. We have lots of stuff that's happening behind the scenes, digging into spreadsheets, and we also have lots of stuff that's much more public facing, event planning, comms, things like that. Yeah, so I guess we can stop there. And if there are folks that have questions, we'd love to see if we can answer them.
Thank you very much for this detailed and frankly frightening presentation about what the plans are. Linda in chat has a question. What are the mayor's budget priorities that you're objecting to?
Let me pull that back up. How do I go backwards? we have a
No,
slide
no,
on that? We did.
it's forward.
Forward.
Yeah, you're too far back. Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
That's what gets funded. It's surveillance. The SPD is getting a 16% increase of their budget. The ghost cops, the sweeps on the weekends, some World Cup stuff, jails. There's more money being spent on lawsuits. To be fair, across the board, so it's not just SPD lawsuits, but that certainly is a lot of them. The advertising campaign for SPD and the hiring bonuses that are now, what are they now? $50,000 for lateral hire. So those are just a sampling.
I see from Tara, is there a stock email message we can copy paste and add to? Like I mentioned before, we do have a lot of talking points on a variety of issues, including some kind of stock language that you can use. And I'm sharing my screen right now, but I can drop that into the chat once I stop that, or maybe Amy or Kate could beat me to it. But on the whole, we encourage people to write their own messages coming from your perspective, your experience, the things that you care about and why it matters to you. Oh, thank you, Kate. I see a message from Dean. Is City Council largely aligned with the mayor's budget recommendations? Yes and no. There's definitely a lot of alignment in terms of wanting to support the mayor's priorities, whether or not that is their own priorities. I think that we are seeing some movement around the edges on some of these issues. But for the large part, there is a lot of alignment, I would say. I don't know, Amy or Kate, if you want to jump in on that.
I think the Seattle channel might be saved because Sarah Nelson is a big fan of the Seattle channel. I do think that there will be the tinkering around the edges. Exactly. And I will just add, if you find the talking points overwhelming, I mean, you can just pick which kind of paragraph or two you care about the most and cut and paste it and send it, and that's better than not doing anything. Obviously, if you can add a little bit of your own thoughts about it, that's even better. But I don't want people to be so overwhelmed by it that they don't do anything at all.
With the tenant services cuts, I expect that rental assistance will actually get some additional funding. It sounds like Sarah Nelson and Kathy Moore both really support rental assistance, but not as much tenant services. It was kind of framed as some of the organizations doing that work are just middlemen, but we believe that they kind of go hand in hand, and that you need those organizations to connect you to the rental assistance and protect you in other ways. I also have like a little like tenant services specific guide that might help with some talking points and also guidance on how to incorporate your personal story into your public comment.
Thanks for sharing that. I see another question in the chat. Seems like the mayor is appropriating money into public safety, which has been a priority for voters. Yes, definitely. I do think that public safety as a kind of catch-all buzzword means a lot of different things to different people. One of the things that we were talking about earlier is when we're talking about a lot of these services and protections for people, we're talking about upstream solutions that really can take people away from the carceral system before the issue even really arises, especially when we're talking about people who are unhoused. There's a lot of criminalization in the city of just straight up poverty. People who are unhoused don't have a lot of options usually. And what we're talking about is public safety when we're talking about those services and supports. In my mind, maybe even more so than police funding. Whereas what Amy was saying earlier, the police, even as designed by someone like the mayor, are still really meant to be kind of a last, what was the word that you used?
They're a backstop, or
A
but a
backstop,
last
yeah.
resort as well, right? When everything has gone wrong, then you call the police. But unfortunately, like a lot of what has gone wrong, the police are not equipped to actually help with. So it actually kind of sucks to be them too in that scenario, unfortunately.
Yeah, and this is actually something that police officers in Seattle and around the country have been talking about for a number of years now, that we, as a society, place a lot of expectations on the police to take care of problems that they're not equipped to take care of. And it's really taxing on them, and can put them in a lot of, undesirable situations as well. I see a comment from Paul. Additionally, cutting parks, libraries, after school and summer programs, social services all result in more civic problems and potentially more crime. Exactly, yeah. And Paul, I see your hand as well. Was that?
Yeah, I also saw that it looks like there might be cuts coming to the department that oversees workers' rights. So things like wage theft, safety in your work site, things like that. And so,
Exactly.
when we talk about public safety, one of the just astounding statistics that I saw a few years ago is that across the US, wage theft is larger than all other forms of theft combined. So more than robberies plus other white collar crime, plus bank robberies, plus shoplifting, carjacking, all of those combined is less than wage theft. And, so when we talk about public safety and we got to get tough on crime, things like that, there is a question of for whom. And when we are cutting back on enforcement on wage theft, which impacts people who, typically are at the lower end of the pay scale, people are more likely to, be at risk of housing instability, et cetera. We're again just exacerbating the problems. So.
Thank you. That's really important as well. And I think it's also important to note that as we're cutting, as we're having layoffs in the Office of Labor Standards and Office of Civil Rights, we're also defunding legal services for people who are then put in those situations and are trying to find a recourse. Other questions for us? I'm not sure exactly how much time we have on the agenda here, so please jump in if we're running over.
We have more time if there's more questions that people have. Linda?
It's John that has the question.
Yeah, does anybody talk about a basic income? I mean, basically, a lot of these things, I'm a big fan of like having an encompassing a principle that's being followed that that is cheaper because it's less bureaucratic, it's less focused on specific things. And to me, a basic income in the context of the fact that jobs are being eliminated right and left, and that the only people that benefit from this automation is capitalists rather than workers who are being displaced. To me, this is a larger issue that unfortunately is not being given its due.
Well, John, boy, are you in the right place.
I know. So guaranteed basic income is one of Solidarity Budget's guarantees. We have a whole like 2-pager all about it. And yes, definitely, it's a great idea. There have been a lot of pilots that have proliferated across the country since 2020. A lot of that was funded by COVID relief dollars. And what we've seen like across the board is just it's just so helpful on so many levels. Not only does it stabilize people in terms of their income and housing, but it improves both their physical and mental health. There's a study showing that it improves like babies, like children, early childhood brain development. There are studies showing that it decreases violence in surrounding neighborhoods. It really helps to restabilize people who, for example, have been in prison for a while and then they're coming back out and have no idea what to do because they're so not used to being in our world anymore. So that they can then become successful once more and not like end up in a cycle going back to prison. There are so many ways in which we've seen that guaranteed basic income is really helpful for folks. So yes, huge proponent. We would love to see, I mean, a lot of work is being done on this at the state level, which I do think is great because it will impact more people. But would love to see some city funding for a city program as well at some point.
We do have more.
Go ahead.
Oh,
We do
yeah.
have more. I was just going to say, we do have more information on our guaranteed basic income guarantee on our website if you want to check that out.
That's great. And there's a couple other things. The cost of housing is intimately related to the increase of population. You know, you're driving in Lewis County, you're driving behind a logging truck, and the size of a tree that they will harvest is small compared to what it used to be. And the fact is that an ever-increasing human population is putting pressure on resources. I mean, the cost of wood has quadrupled in the last few years. And there's not enough talk about that. Now, I'm old enough to remember that in the 70s, this was a big topic of discussion. But I really think that we have to think about population like China and India do. The other one is, I think that the crime thing, I mean, to me, it's both. You have to have a big carrot and a big stick. Now, people that sell hard dope, I don't see them paying much of a price for what they do. And hard dope is intimately related with a lot of these poverty problems. And I would just like to say, in parting, read Ken Wilber, because he has more to say about all these things. There's something beyond the right-left dualism that has a lot to say to all our problems.
I will add that Alexis Mercedes Rink had a really great point in that, you know, with climate change accelerating, people are going to be moving around more. And so there is the potential that a lot more folks are going to be moving north to places where, you know, potentially there is more water or more stability in general. So that's also something, you know, when we're thinking more medium term instead of just in the next year or two, that I think we have to consider as responsible residents of Seattle.
Absolutely.
That's kind of a perfect segue for something that is unrelated to our current city budget, but I'm going to do a little brief plug for anyway, which is that the city of Seattle is currently redoing our comprehensive plan, which is how we use our land, how we allocate our space, where we're allowed to build different kinds of things. And when we're talking about the availability and affordability of housing in our city, a big piece of that is where we're legally allowed to build apartments. And so paying attention to the comprehensive plan update is critically important to making kind of long-term changes and making things easier on how we are able to build affordable housing, among many other things. That process is happening now. We had a first draft come out this year, and then a round of community engagement around it. I think the second round of the second draft coming from the mayor's office is expected early next year, and there will be kind of another round of community engagement around that. Linda, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the issue of housing. We have lost 19% of our small landlord units in this town recently. And the reason is that there is so much tenant protection that people just can't handle it anymore. And some part of this tenant protection is the legal burden of how you communicate with your tenant. It costs us $250 a year to join the Rental Housing Association in order to have the correct forms to deal with our tenant in our one small basement apartment. And I'm sure you've read horror stories about people who can't make people who are in their rentals who are harming other renters and putting them in danger. They can't get them evicted. So they can't actually do what they as landlords want to do, which is provide a safe, affordable place for their tenants. And a lot of small landlords will keep the rent relatively low because they want the stability. I know that's what we've done. It's becoming more and more difficult to be a small landlord in this city. And I've talked to Ms. Rink about that, and she really listened to what I was saying, which was heartening. But be careful how much you remove of, or how much you impose with all of these changes. Yes, tenants need protection, but one of the protections they need is what I used to observe when I doorbelled my precinct, which was most houses had a second mailbox on them, even though they looked like single family homes, because somebody was renting a second unit in that single family building. And most of those were going for lower rents. Instead, we've torn those down and we've built townhouses, which cost 4 times as much. So let's be careful about the kinds of changes that we want in the city plan. And let me also say that the city gives us no help in getting any of those forms. That's why it costs us so much to get it from a private organization.
Sorry that you experienced that, Linda.
Thank you.
I see a note
I see what Paul put in the chat.
I see a note from Kate in the chat also, an invitation to reach out and chat outside of the meeting about this if you're interested, with her contact information.
Sure.
And now that I'm looking at the chat, I'm seeing that I missed several long conversations here, and I apologize to those people. I had closed the chat box for a moment.
All right. Any other last questions or comments? Sorry, Kate, it looked like you were maybe about ready to say something. Did I misread that?
I think that the conversation around small landlords and tenants needs to be opened up, but probably not in this space. But there are ways that we could work in solidarity. I think that the city should be providing more support for small landlords. That's definitely a conversation about, I mean, it does tie to funding because it goes through SDCI, and they're cutting tenant services, which would include any support to small landlords as well.
All right. Any last questions?
Well, thank you all so much for having us. We really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thank you to all three of you for coming. This was a super enlightening presentation. Lots of detail, love it. We will get information out to our membership on how they can get involved to make sure that their voice is heard in this budget process. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. With that, moving back on to our agenda. We are, let's see, we're at committee reports. So last bit here, go through each of the committees and see in turn if there's anything that the committee chairs have to report. So for finance, Brad, anything to report? No, we may not have Brad in the meeting. Is Jacob still here? I think Jacob had to drop. PCOs, Ryan, anything more to say?
No, everyone just check that email I sent this morning, find some ways to get involved, and remember to reach out to 5 people and remind them their ballots are coming and tell them what you care about so they know how to vote.
And policy and advocacy, Jeremy.
Nothing additional here except for we will be following up with those Emily Randall and Kim Schreier volunteer opportunities. Sent those over to Ryan and we will get those into your inbox.
Awesome. Thank you. Liam, anything on technology?
Just wanted to throw out there that if you are looking to get involved with the 43rd, we do need some help running social media and that sort of good stuff. So if you're interested, and I know there's other volunteer roles that we are looking for people to hop in on. So if you feel like getting involved, please reach out to Paul and we'll get you plugged in. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Andrew, King County Democrats. I thought I saw Andrew. Yeah, Andrew, anything on King County Democrats?
Yes. So we had interest meeting for the e-board on Sunday, which was good. And then reorg would be December 15th. So they'll send out an email and information about ballots and how to vote to all PCOs.
Awesome, thanks. And Amy, Sam, anything from
Yeah.
state?
So just the headlines with state committee business is we have approved a brand new Muslim caucus, which we are so incredibly excited to get going, to be welcoming this community into the party and, you know, building organizing with them and making sure they have a voice. So that's been just some incredible news recently. And also the state committee submitted their nominations for various Democratic candidates. And when the state party nominates Democratic candidates, it allows us to then replace them if there's a vacancy. It allows the PCOs to vote and replace them. And so for the 43rd Democrats, we nominated the folks that the Democrats here consider to be Democrats. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and with that, we've reached the end. Again, you know, because we didn't reach quorum, we haven't approved the September minutes, and we didn't take up the resolution on affordable housing at Fort Lawton. We will do those at a future meeting when we have quorum. But right now, we have time for good of the order if anyone has something to share. Raise your hand, or actually you can just come off mute if you would like. Anything for good of the order?
Melissa Chowdhury here. Thank you for an illuminating meeting and great discussion of the budget. I learned a lot there. Just calling out again that yes, we have lots of opportunities to get involved in canvassing. Thank you so much for the endorsement. Our website is votemelissaforcongress.com. You can also do /contribute or /volunteer. We very much appreciate it, and I will put that in the chat.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Anyone else? All right, with that, thank you all very much. Please check your email for ways to get out the vote. And as Ryan has exhorted us, talk to 5 friends, neighbors, family members to get them to vote. This is a super, super important election. Please remember to vote all the way down ballot. The judge races are important. Supreme Court race is very important. There's a MAGA candidate running in the Supreme Court race. It's important that we maintain progressive values in the Supreme Court. And of course, vote for Sean, vote for Alexis, and vote no on all of the state initiatives. Vote for Nick, Sal, Mike, and Chris. Yes, thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good night.